The Osborne family came to Arenberg in 1912 when my grandfather, Joseph Rowe Osborne, bought my father this property. Dad had flunked out of medicine and needed to get on the land somewhere because he had a lot of ill health. In 1915 he went to the World War I in the AIF and came back in 1917, having been invalided out of the army. And in 1920 he married my mother, whose name was Helena Arenberg. And I have an older brother and an older sister, and I was born in 1926 and my mother died at that stage. So I was named Frances Arenberg Osborne in her honour. In 1928 my father started vintage and built a winery, and in 1943 I left school and came home and to help work the vineyard, and I've been here ever since. It, of course, it was a great struggle for Dad with losing his wife and then going into depression, and the wine industry was never very profitable. However, eventually we started getting bigger with more bulk wines through the 40s into the 50s. Dad never wanted to go into bottling or anything else, but I wanted to do my own label, and in 1957 he died, and in 1958 I got married, and my wife Pauline and I decided to call the wine Arenberg, and we put a red stripe on the label because I went to Prince Alfred College and red and white was my colour. So the Prince's Red is on that label. Through the 60s it became established particularly on the half gallon and then 2 litre flagons. By the middle of the 70s we had about 75% of all the 2 litre glass in Australia because the casks had taken the big boys out, and we were very popular with the flagon. It was an amazing brand building exercise because we went into bottles in the 64, but it was the flagons really that introduced people to the Arenberg. We had a lot of success in the 60s. 67 Burgundy had 29 golds and 7 trophies in Australian shows, which obviously made people take a notice of us. And in 69 we won the Jimmy Watson Trophy with a Cabernet Sauvignon. Chester was born in 1962, and he always wanted to be a winemaker, and he graduated from Roseworthy in 1983 with a Bachelor of Applied Science Enology. And I was waiting for him to come home so that we could modernise the winery and really get into modern technology.
I joined the company in 1983 after finishing a Roseworthy degree in winemaking. But really I actually started at the age of 7. I got 10 cents an hour when I was 7, and then I got a raise when I was 8 to 30 cents an hour, so they must have thought I was doing all right, although I thought I'd actually ate more grapes than I put in the bucket. But I worked on my holidays in the bottling line and in the winery and in the vineyard, and so I got to know it pretty well as well. I went to Europe for 6 months in 1984 with 2 other winemakers. Travelled all of France and Germany and Spain to see what they were doing there, and so that was a great basis for winemaking. Really, my winemaking's a mix of heritage, what I learnt in Europe, and really just making wine. I mean, no one can teach you to make wine till you taste the grapes and see what wine you get out of that, and then you really start learning about what is actually happening in the vineyard. And what I learned was we want to go back to the old style of viticulture. So now we don't cultivate, we don't use any herbicides, we haven't fertilised for 15 years. It's all very minimal, no irrigation if we can. So it's really very much like it was back in the days when it was worked with horses, as my father and his father worked the vineyard. So the style of wine is long, soil focused, a lot of minerality, and age-worthy wines with a lot of distinct character. So I'm sure you'll enjoy them. Cheers.